Horror fam to HHN365, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. My name is Mike, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, just Jonathan tonight. But I have a co-host.
Yes,
What's up,
hello.
man?
How's it going, man?
Oh, I'm tired, but I'm still recovering from opening night. I'm not going to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very very exhausting opening night. We're still sighing after that for last episode.
On today's show, we're going to take a deep dive look at the houses because on our first episode, we had so much to cover, we really didn't get to take a deep look. But before we get to that, as always, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at HHN365 and on TikTok at HHN365pod. We have a Discord that you can join us in the discussion, and the link is in the description. And we have a merch shop at HHN365.com. You can also join us in the discussion by leaving a voicemail at 407-906-4134. We have some news and things to cover. So let's start with some H365 news, some housekeeping, I'd like to call it. We have drink reviews on our TikTok.
Yeah, we actually just get a drink, film ourselves like trying it for the first time and our reactions to it, and show the ingredients and whatnot. It's a really cool series that we're doing on that platform exclusively. So unless like it gets to the end of the season, we're gonna try to keep them exclusively to the TikTok platform. So if you're interested in that, make sure to follow us at HHN365 Pod because I think that is one of the most fun pieces of content to record because it's literally you get to see our initial reactions to a drink for better or for worse.
I have watched a couple, and yeah, Duff's reactions are pretty great.
They're
Pretty great in some
incredible.
of them. Um, you can also take a look at our YouTube. We talked about it last week, but we'll talk about it again this week. We are putting out YouTube content. We have all of the walkthroughs now on the YouTube. So if you are not following us on our YouTube, now is a perfect time to follow us on our YouTube. We would really appreciate it. It helps us a little bit by the algorithm of YouTube. We're letting our content be seen if you were to give us a subscribe there.
Yeah, you get to see all the walkthroughs basically through Mike's eyes as he was going through all of them during media night, which is kind of cool. You could have like the Mike POV.
Yeah, if you ever were to walk a mile in my shoes, well, more like 10 miles, but but then edit it down a little bit. Yeah, you can do it by subscribing to our YouTube channel.
There we go. There we go. But strangely enough, I know we're in season. I know that the event has started. We have just finished the second week, and as when this episode comes out, we'll be into the third week. But we do have news, and not rumors, just news. Starting off in Hollywood, because I think it would be very weird if we didn't address this. Talking about how much, I mean, we talk about Hollywood all year round. HHN Hollywood is officially open. Not just
It's
team member preview, just the a whole event is open now.
it's official. Yeah. I know you've been trying to be spoiler free. I've looked at a little thing. I haven't done any walkthroughs yet, but it looks like they have a fun event this year. I
I'm
will say that.
excited. I can't go like a second like scrolling on Instagram without like just being like, oh, facade, oh god, oh my god, house video, oh god, oh my god, that's a death angel. Like it keeps going, but I'm trying my best to avoid all of it. It is getting a little difficult though.
Yeah. Well, if you're trying to avoid it on and you're listening to the show, we won't be talking about Hollywood with that for at least a couple of weeks. We'll have a hype list coming out later this month, and then we'll have our full Hollywood review coming in October. Once most of us can at least get out there. Unfortunately, I can't get out there this year, but we are sending three of the four of us, right? Are getting out there this year.
Yes, I am. It's gonna be a fun time, and I know you're gonna be teasing us like the whole way, being like, "Oh, I watched this walkthrough. It's pretty cool. Oh, the
No, I'm
weekend
not going
looks
to do that
pretty
to you.
good."
I'm not going to do that.
Oh my goodness.
I may have
Um,
already watched a few.
maybe.
Here or there, not too much.
Oh my goodness. I can't wait. I always have a fun time at HH in Hollywood. And this year I'm going for 2 days actually, so I am doing more than I probably should, but I'm like, whatever, I'm out there, why not? So I'm definitely excited for their event. I know a lot of people are saying some good things. Some good, some not so good things, but some good things about their event, and I'm really excited to check it out eventually later this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I'm interested to check out is Blumhouse Wolfman. We got a little. Do we want to talk about Wolfman Gate?
Are you
Let's
sure you're interested to check out the Wolfman after what
I mean, I
happened?
kind of am. Not in the way that I think they want us to, but I am interested in the Wolfman. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, you can like you were saying. So Orlando, it was one of the days this week. I don't remember or last week technically from when we're recording this. That the stage that had the little Wolfman promotion, it said the Wolfman and had some sound effects, and it was a little stage, got a character added to it finally, and we don't know technically if this was the Wolfman, but most people clung on to that it was because right behind the character it says the
The
Wolfman.
Wolfman. Yeah, it's not a logical leap to saying, "Oh, this is the Wolfman." It may have not have been. It was a bad planning if it wasn't.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't wanna believe it's the Wolfman, including my friends, because like, it's not I don't know, it's not rude to say I don't think it's mean to say that the costume the actor did fantastic, really, with their role, what they could do, like, they did phenomenal, but the costume itself was not very good, and
Yeah,
it not only
Gotham
got
had
picked
like
up by Mhm.
very like mid tier like villain energy. Like I
Yeah,
don't want this
exactly.
guy to be like the main villain. I don't want him to be the main protagonist. He it was it looked he had supporting role energy for sure. This guy,
It
but I
l
mean, like you said,
Mhm.
the actor was great, but the actual costume supporting role energy for sure.
Exactly, and the problem that happened because of this is that every, like, news site was covering this because this was the first official look ever at this character before even a trailer came out, and they're all calling this character the Wolfman, obviously, and it's going on all, like, the not just HHN news sites, but just news sites, like
Nude
film.
sites.
No. God,
It's
no.
on
God damn it.
naked news.
Oh god, the wo the
Haven't thought about that in the 90s.
why is Hollywood Horror Nights the Wolfman appear? Oh god. Anyway, so um Jesus. But like on actual like news sites like discussing film and other places, and it got huge traction, and everyone was universally panning the costume because it's not very good at all. And then a couple days later, I think either the next day or like 2 days after, the Wolfman wasn't there, and everyone's like, "Hey, where's the Wolfman?" And they asked like on Twitter, like the official Universal account, like, "Hey, where is this character?" And Universal was like,
Where did he go?
"Yeah." He will not be appearing today, actually. That's what like they said. Like he won't be here, and I think it's safe to assume we could be wrong. It could be very outdated by the time this episode comes out, but I feel like it's safe to assume that the character just not going to appear again. Like I think it got so panned, um, like across every like official news station that maybe someone was just cut it. It's not worth it. Just get rid of it.
Are they
So
gonna take down the backdrop eventually?
I
Like
hope
maybe on
so.
Wednesday, like people will just be like, "Oh, it's gone."
It's it's very possible. But what a funny situation this is because HHN isn't usually the one to be breaking news, like film news, and this is like a rare case where it did, and it did not pan out for him at all.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun moment. I have to admit, it's fun to poke fun at something just for a little bit.
Especially when it's related to Blumhouse. It's like
Yeah,
Blumhouse
and it was all
took. Mhm.
it was like lighthearted too. It was like a lighthearted fun.
Oh yeah, no. Once again, like the actor, I think everyone had a lot of fun with the actor, and I think the actor was killing it. It's all at the end of the day, it was just, what is this costume? That's the whole that's all the discourse. Just like, huh? This is the Wolfman. I think they were comparing like pictures of I forgot his name. I think it was like John Carpenter was like on the Hollywood red carpet for Halloween Horror Nights, and everyone's like, "Is this Blumhouse? Is the Wolfman?" And it's like, oh my god. So
How long do
yeah,
you think he was out there? Just like estimate, like how long was the Wolfman at HHN?
I think he was there for the day. I don't know if he appeared. I don't think he came back. He was either there
It
for
was
one day or
that one.
two, but then after that, it was just been empty.
And I don't think he didn't like get there at the beginning because I remember like people like being like, "Oh, Wolfman's out, Wolfman's out, go get it!" Like it was like a breaking news type of situation.
It
And then
was.
yeah,
Yeah, it absolutely was because the Wolfman was not there like starting. I think they were waiting closer to when the trailer dropped because I think a day after the Wolfman came out, they put out the trailer for the movie, so it was probably time for that reason or waiting for Hollywood's event to open or something like that. But yeah, that's the story of Orlando's Blumhouse's The Wolfman.
kids, that's the story of when Blumhouse's The Wolfman made one appearance in HHN1.
It's historic. It really is. It will go into the HHN wiki and people will have a blast with that, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's
Um
kind of like when like what is that scare zone they had for one night in Sting Alley?
Oh yeah,
Um,
with the icons.
yeah, exactly. It was like 2009. There was like one night on closing night they had a scare zone to like advertise. There's a name for it, or like an like unofficial name for it, but I can't remember. But yeah, with the icons, you're absolutely right.
So now Blumhouse's The Wolfman is in the same level
Yeah.
as that scare zone, I
Yeah,
guess.
and that's Scare Zone, the one time only. Yeah. People are gonna it's gonna I'm sure HH and your friend Alex is updating it up right now, typing it up.
I'm sure this will 100% be a trivia question, by the way. If you
Oh
come
yeah.
to our future trivias, this will 100% be
100%.
one.
100%.
It's too
You got a
wild.
free answer. You could just yeah, you're a free answer already.
Oh my goodness.
That's gonna be my Halloween costume.
The Blumhouse is the Wolfman.
Yeah. Yep. All right, enough of talking about the fucking wolf man. Let's
We talked about it way longer than I thought we were going
I
to.
totally did. Totally would.
I
Totally
love
did.
it. I love it. Um, but yeah, I guess for our last news section, it's not really news, but just I guess just news for us. Just like, hey, it's the second week of HHN. What did we try? Did we see anything new? Did we do anything new? Did we drink, eat anything new? And I know you weren't able to make it out to the second week, Mike. Um,
Yeah, I didn't. So yeah, this question I guess is really for yourself or
it's,
or for the
yeah, it's gonna be kind of
listeners.
awkward, but all right, let me tell you about what I did.
Let me talk about myself.
Let me talk about
Got to
myself.
get over that eventually when you're on a podcast.
It's true, it's true. But I do think this part that I talk about, you can chime in here because I got to check out the Dead Coconut Club. And I know you haven't been there, but you've seen some pictures. And Mike,
Yeah.
let me tell you, the pictures don't even do it justice. I honestly think this is the best Dead Coconut Club we have had, and I'm not usually like a bar person. I'm really not. Um, but this is the first time I've wanted to actually like stay in one of the Dead Coconut Clubs. Like just sit and just like be there for like an hour or like 40 minutes just sitting around because if you guys don't know, listeners don't know, it's basically themed half and half. So the bottom floor is themed to vamps. So it has references to every vamp scare zone that we've had, but it also has just like characters walking around on their own. It's more of like an 80, it's more like 80s is what the
Yeah.
bottom floor is themed to, but it has like little references to all of them. But it has like 80s music playing. It has as the actors, like usually there's a like in the past at Coconut Clubs, there was like a troupe of people who would like sing every couple minutes and then they would come back and or whatever like on the hour until a certain time where it turned into a club. This time it's actors that just like vampires dressed as like iconic like musicians. Like for example, one of them is dressed as Slash, which is really funny, and then another is dressed as like Joan Jett, and there's another one too. Like there are a lot of them that dress as musicians and they're just vampires walking around just looking at people, just like like sort of just looking at them with their eyes, just like like I'm gonna eat, sort of like I'm gonna kill you type scenario, but without saying it, just sort of looking at you, making the whole area kind of unnerving. And I cannot tell you as a Halloween Horror Nights fan how cool this is because it feels like a vamp zone was just literally dropped into Dead Coconut Club. The fact that these actors can spend so much time just hanging around and making it like a real environment makes you want to stay and just be like, what are they doing? Where are they looking?
Yeah.
Like what's going on? What are they planning? It's really unique.
Yeah, if you ever wanted like a real like HHN nightclub, which people have been asking for a long time, this really feels like it. This really, I feel like the first couple of years, I think they were working towards something like this, and they finally got to it. This is really great. I love what they do here.
It's absolutely incredible, and to top it off for this bottom floor, they also have a dance show, sort of, like, they do, like, all the vampires go on the dance floor and do a dance every, I think, half an hour or so, and it's like an '80s song, and they do, like, a specific dance, and it's super cool, like, everyone's watching them. From the top floor, you have a great view too of them just, like, full on '80s dancing as vampires, sometimes they go "Rawr," like, it's cool, like
Yeah, like Thriller. Think kind of like Thriller, like a
yeah,
little bit
exactly.
like a but like in but in yeah, like them doing like a synchronized dance similar to like Thriller. It's fun.
It's so much
I
fun.
have watched the video of it.
You're gonna have to check it out, like, next time or one day, Mike,
Yeah,
because I literally think this is, like, if you are for those listening out there, for those who are planning a vacation, if you can fit the time, obviously, if you only have a couple days, you just wanna spend it at HHN, like, go do that. But if you have some extra time, if you're there at 4, because it opens at 4, and you have some time to spare before Stay and Scream, before you have to get in there, just spend, like, a little bit in here, like, especially this floor specifically, because it's a really, really good time, and it does feel like HHN. It feels like an extension of it almost.
yeah.
Um, but there
Let's
is
talk
also
about
the
the
top
second floor.
floor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So the second floor, like you were saying, is themed to Blumhouse. It's themed to Blumhouse, but I don't know if you saw pictures of this floor, Mike, but I think this floor itself might be better than the scare zone we have this year.
I've heard that. You're not the first one to say that. Like, definitely, if you want photo ops, this is a better way to do it, in my opinion.
Yep, they have, like, photo ops with the grabber, like, just a mannequin and by the phone. There's a Megan, like, doll that I'm pretty sure was in Hollywood's Blumhouse experience. They had it over there. They probably just shipped it over. That looks really realistic and really cool. There's good, like, Happy Death Day photo ops, and it has the dagger from Freaky that's probably just straight from the house, which is really cool. Like, it has a lot of interesting props that you can take pictures with, and just a nice little environment where it's Blumhouse, but also, like, you can just get a drink there too. And speaking of drinks, I did get a drink there. And I think that it was actually one of my favorite drinks of the night. And it was the Purge Punch. I don't remember exactly what was in it. Someone could look it up, but it had, like, sort of like a coconut like,
Ooh,
yeah, like coconut flavor to it and it was also, like, sweet, and I'm really bad with drinks, so I cannot tell you exactly what's in it, but I'll tell you that was one of my favorite drinks, like, that I've experienced all event. It was really good.
I'm the exact same way. Like, you can't like when I try something like, oh, I'm getting the nodes of the. No, it all just tastes like one taste. I'm really bad at like separating the different flavor palettes of drinks and stuff.
Yeah, it's especially since I don't usually drink, so what I do is just like, "Oh, yum, it's good," or bad. It's sort of just
Yeah.
either or.
It's good.
It's good. But I do think that if you want, like, a quality drink, like, compared to a lot of the mixed drinks in the event itself, at least that Purge bunch I can advocate for. The Megan one, the Factory Made Fear was pretty good too, but the Purge punch was legitimately, like, something I would, like, if I wanted to get a drink and get again, I probably would, because I think that one was actually very delicious.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's get to the main segment. So, like I said earlier, we're gonna take another look at some of these houses, and we're really gonna deep dive because the first episode we had a lot to cover, and full disclosure, I think one of us had to go, so we kept it pithy. At least we tried to. So we have a lot more to talk about. Let's where do we want to start
Well, I
going through
was
these houses?
thinking that we could essentially, for this, since last time we did it, like, in order of our rankings, this time we could do it in order of just going around the park.
Perfect. Yeah.
So starting off with the first house you're going to see when you enter the park, going straight, and that would be Monstros, the monsters of Latin America.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really like this one. I honestly, again, I'm going to say it again. I don't think there really isn't a bad house this year. There really isn't. Um, but do you think this one is better than the Hollywood version overall? Well, let's start there.
That's a great question because it's the reason, and we will go over like my updated rankings at the end because there are some things that changed for me. But this is a house that did not change for me. It was at 9 last time I talked about it, and it's at 9 now for me. And it's because I don't think it's better. Um, and it's weird because technically it does a lot of things better, right? I think that the sets are way more impressive. Obviously, Hollywood has a tighter space to work with. Orlando has a soundstage; they can do more, right? I do think they actually gave Talalapucci something to do in this one, uh, and more so than the last house, which her section and La Lechuza's sections kind of just flew by. La Lechuza has actual like incredible smells and not incredible. I mean, they're nasty, but for horror nights, like whoa, smells
Right.
and sets and really cool section. I just think by making it super expansive while still following Hollywood's essential formula, they kind of lost the plot of it a little bit. And I don't know if you agree with me. I just feel like the reason Monstros worked a lot for me in Hollywood's is because it was tight. Um, because like you really felt like those monsters were really close. Just it went by like I don't know, like El Sabone's section felt really interesting and really expansive and really just sort of like creative, like going into the sack and entering it and like really seeing all the bones and stuff. I feel like Orlando tried to like Orlando-fy a Hollywood house, and I don't know if that works for me. I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense. It's still a
No,
good house. I
no, you're
think
making
yeah.
definitely making sense. Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate that because I don't I just think like the scares are not there compared to Hollywood's. I feel like Elsa Bone's section is kind of just not as good at all because like I mentioned the sack part, which is we make a joke about it, but it was a really cool scene in Hollywood's, and here it's just a transition. Um, and also El Cibone is a normal sized person for like half of his scenes, which is kind of strange.
Yeah,
Just like
he's
a
like a
normal
normal
dude.
sized person, and then he has like one or two stilt walkers. It's confusing uh, for
It's
that
it's
part.
ve it's very strange, and La Lechuza's section, while I mean, wow, that animatronic is so good, and we saw it in Hollywood, and it's so good. For me, it's just like it loses a lot of its punch because we kind of already saw it, and that's what they build up to be like the big moment in the house. It's La Lechuza the last monster, unlike El Sabone, so it's like, all right, here we go, and it's this animatronic, and it's just like I saw it before. It's good. I like it, but I'm not wowed. With I'm sure a lot of other people are, and I think the ending with I do appreciate that we do like sort of go into a cemetery, like sort of ending, seeing all the monsters. I think that's cool. But my God, I don't think like I think you'll agree with me, Mike. I think they fumbled the ball on the "This grave is for you," which is like the coolest scene in Hollywood's that ties the whole thing together and makes it
Yeah.
impactful. We have like I think Hunter called it this on the catacombs. I recommend listening to that because it was really funny. Like a spirit Halloween, like La Muerte just like turning its head really unnaturally, like leaned up against the wall.
Oh, when did their episode come out? I've been waiting for their full review. It
Today,
must have.
actually,
Oh, I was gonna say yeah, because I just must have checked right before it dropped. To be honest,
that's
because yeah.
funny. Yeah, it just came out like a couple hours ago. So I of course, being a massive Catacombs fan, listened to the whole thing.
Oh,
And so like
oh,
very
geez.
exactly. But what do you think? Do you think this is better than Hollywood's version? And if you like, do you think what things were better and what things were worse? Because I do think Orlando does some things a lot better and some things worse. Depending.
I do think it was overall better.
Hmm.
I but I have to admit that I expected it to be like way better or to be like improved upon like quite a bit, like on scale, and like at least try to like to do some kind of the like depth of field stuff where they did in like Chupacabra, where it made it really feel like you were in like the town and like an expansive. And it didn't quite scratch that itch for me that I wanted. I will say for people who did not experience Hollywoods, this is getting like some a pretty good reviews just
Oh yeah.
because of what they do in this house. A lot of it is we've never seen it Orlando before, or at least in a long while. Like to get an animatronic like that quality, it's been a while since we've gotten something like that. Like
Oh yeah.
so I did, and like some of the grandness of some of the puppets and things like that. It's been a while since we've gotten those. And we got it kind of a couple of times this year, so I do like that. That being said, for those who experienced Hollywood's house, it was quite, so a lot of that stuff came from Hollywood, so the the wow factor was a little bit already spoiled for us. But I do think overall it was better than Hollywood. I do think this is going to probably grow on me a little bit once I get some runs in it. I think it was a pretty solid Orlando adaptation for a house that I liked, but I didn't quite love, but was arguably very good. I mean, like objectively really good at Hollywood last year.
Yeah, and I do completely understand what you're saying too. And for a lot, like you're right, for a lot of people who didn't go through Hollywoods, this is going to be in their top three or top five. And I'm so happy for people who can do that. Who like I think that's incredible. And we have like everyone on the show. This show has bias, because we saw Hollywoods, and it will affect it, in some way or form. But most people don't do like go to both coasts, so for most people, this is a completely new thing, and they're experiencing a lot of cool things for the first time, and I think that's really really fun.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been trying to do is I've been trying to be like, this house is mostly built for people who are going to go through this one time, right? Because 95% of the people who go through this house are is going to experience it one time. Did they do a good job for the house if for you're only going to see it once? It like repeatability and stuff like that, like that's fun for us nerds, that's fun for the people who have express passes and frequent fears and things like that, who can experience it more than once. But 95% of the time you're going to experience it once, so I think I'm doing my best to look at these houses from that lens. Like what was my first run like, what was um you know that one time, because that's how, when you're designing the house, that's ideally what you're going to try to do. And I think for this particular house they did a really good job at having that wow factor for the first run.
Now I do have an interesting question, because this is one of the first times, I think the first time, like we've adapted a Hollywood house almost as like we done we done sorry La Llorona before, but it hasn't been this kind of almost exact. It's not like a copy, but it's really really similar. I know our La Llorona sort of took a completely different approach. Um, do you want us to continue to adapt Hollywood originals in the manner that we did with Monstrose this year? Or do you think we shouldn't go that route? And if we do adapt a Hollywood original, we should do something completely different with it? Because that's kind of what I was hoping we were going to do with this one, but that's not what we ended up doing.
It's hard to say.
Hmm.
I do think Hollywood and West Coast haunts in general, they have a very distinct style, and it's hard to put your finger on exactly what makes that style unique. I think one of the things is like a few wow scenes with like big puppets and like animatronics, like Not Scary Farm, or Not Scary Farm does that a lot, where you're gonna have like one or two really big like like showstopper scenes. instead of where Orlando seems to try to like extend that kind of wow element kind of throughout the house, and you may not have like one or two really big puppets, but you're gonna try to have a high quality throughout. um I think it's just gonna be something that if it does continue, it's gonna take some getting used to, because it's just a different mindset. I think that is not necessarily bad. It's just not something I think Orlando people are used to. That you're going to have like a couple of wow scenes, but then the detail and scale of the rest of the house is not going to be quite the same. The
Yeah. And like even more so than just that too, I've had a couple of friends who go through and they're like, "Why are there so many platforms in this house? Why are there so many? We don't usually do that." And it's kind of like because Hollywood's house had a lot of platforms actually, and that's
right,
probably a reason why they did it. And it's it's interesting, you know, seeing Hollywood, not just the way they just tell the story, like you said, having the big moments, but also just like certain scare tactics, like the platforms, like really get
right,
like used over here to the extent that they are in this Monstros house. Is kind of interesting, and for some people it works. I don't know if we need to do that. I don't know if we need the platforms to be honest, because I think Hollywood's I don't know. I don't know if we need the platforms, but regardless, like there are things from Hollywood's even more so than just the way the story is told that were translated into Monstros, including scare tactics, and it's super cool to think about.
definitely. All right. Any final thoughts on Monstros before we move on to down the road to the next house?
I think we're good, but Mike, as we're moving down this road, I really need you to be quiet. Like you can't talk.
That's tough for me. It's,
So where are we headed next, Mike?
well, let's head to. I think this house has just been controversial from the beginning, and I don't. I think just from the moment it was announced, and I feel like that has kind of stayed true. Right? Am I wrong to say that this you, we knew was going to be a love it or hate it house kind of from the minute it was rumored? Um, and it seems like that has kind of stayed true, right?
Yeah,
Would
I
you agree
think
with me on
even
that?
from members of like different podcasts and just different fandoms and people that I'm seeing, there are people that have this really high. There are people like me who have this at 10. And you're right. It's really you either vibed with it, you got it, you understood it, you are all in, or you look at it from another perspective and go, well, they tried something. I'm happy they did. I like when they try things, but it didn't really work. Um, what side of that are you, Mike? Are you on the side of, hey, they made it work? Or are you on the side of, probably is not an IP that should have ended up at Horror Nights, but it is what it is?
So, like I said, I'm trying to look at kind of this year from a lens, especially this house, from
Hmm.
that first run, that first time you experience it. Especially that opening scene. There's a lot of things that they do in this house, um, with the kind of that it's meant to be seen once. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not going to necessarily hold up once you kind of know what's about to happen. And from that perspective, I honestly think they do a lot of creative things in this house. That, and I said it last time on the show, and I'll say it again. That opening moment, that cold open where you go straight into a dark hallway, um, is not something that recall HHN ever doing. To immediately go right into a dark hallway like that. I know graveyard games you kind of they had the whisper hallway at the end that backed up the house. To do it at the beginning like this, I honestly can't recall another time that HHN has ever done it. And you go straight into that dark hallway, and then you have that death angel scare that just like hits and then lights up the entire hallway all at once. I honestly think that is my scariest moment from Premium Scream Night.
Oh,
Like that
wow.
scare really got me. It's never gotten me again, because it's once you know it's about to happen, it's not going to get you. But I was not expecting it. I was expecting just kind of like, okay, this is going to be just a little bit of a dark moment, and I'm going to get out. Rarely hit you with a scare before, like a facade like that. They did. They hit you with a really, like, I loved it. I loved this opening moment. And I don't think it's like I said, I don't think it's repeatability is that great. But for someone who like that has the scariest moment um of the year in this house for me.
I love that for you. I know a lot of other people have been experiencing that too, with particularly that hallway. It is really effective if you don't know the timing. Um, I did figure out the timing really quickly, and you realize it's on a loop, and it's not has nothing to do with talking. I think I was in there, and someone in line, we were in that black hallway, just like started clapping, just went like boom, boom, boom to like test, like to see like, hey, does sound cause the creature to come out? And it doesn't. It's just the
No,
loop.
it's not a loop.
It's a normal trigger, like
Right.
most things, but I mean, if you got that hit like you did, I'm sure it's like incredibly effective. It works really well, and like you said, most people are only going through these houses once, and I feel like this is the case where if you go through it once and you're not super into HHN like we are, like you don't really know the tricks, you don't know the how triggers work, you kind of just are there. You probably would buy into the fact that the creatures will get you if you talked. Like you probably wouldn't have a second thought.
Right.
However, I'm going into this with bias, is knowing how HHN works, knowing how triggers work, knowing how loops are so often and whatever. And I went through this the first time, and it's continued to happen where it's kind of like, I see what they were doing here. I like that they tried. I really think it was, like admirable that they did so well with the property that I thought was going to be impossible to execute. And they did a way better job than I thought they would. I just think the whole, hey, if you talk, they'll come out at you and scare you does not really work when people in the line are talking and nothing happens, and it's kind of annoying. Um, that is a problem I had. Like, I think my opening run, people started talking in my line. I'm like, ah, fuck. I'm like, well, like my first run was just like kind of really screwed over. And I'm like, well, this is my first experience with the house. So that's sort of my main flaw with it. I do like the characters that are in there, the character moments. I think they're fun. I had a really fun interaction with the old man who like kills himself,
Yeah.
screams.
Uh-huh.
He was standing in the middle and he wasn't doing anything. So I looked at him and I did the motion that like that the I don't remember his name, so I'm just gonna call him Jim does from the
Uh-huh.
first movie. And then he screamed like, "Oh, that's cool. That's a cinematic moment." Um, but all they do when they get killed by the creature is kind of just shake their body a little bit, then the light goes off, and I'm just like, "Oh, okay, they died, I guess." I can still see them, but they're dead. And the creatures are the thing that I think a lot of us were the most concerned about over all these things, right? Like, how are they going to do the Death Angels? And
Right.
I think some of them work, like the one you pointed out in the dark hallway. I think there are some specific puppetry in particular that works. But I think like the first big time you see it, full body animatronic, like took me out of the house almost immediately because I'm just like, oh, it's a big
Yeah.
robot that's
I
very
think
clearly a robot.
I think I know which moment you're talking about. It's like
It,
near the middle of the house, and it's just like you get kind of like you definitely looks just kind of like an animatronic robot. Like I know what moment you're talking about.
yeah, and I really think like that's the scene that completely like made me give up. Like I still like it. I still go through it. Listen, it's 10, but it's not a Chucky. It's still a good house. Like at the end of the day, I want to reiterate that. Um, but that's the moment where I'm just like, yeah, none of these scares are really gonna work for me, are they? And a lot of the heads that aren't puppets are kind of just the big heads that are just like on a wheel that like get pushed out and come back in. It's like that are static, and it's like, oh, okay. And it's It's not bad. It's just a factor of I just don't think the concept necessarily works. But I do love that they tried it, and I do think that for what they tried, they did a damn good job with that's all they could really do with this type of property, you know?
I agree. I think when compared to like other like, and I think we would have to say that this is probably the headlining IP, right? Like we don't have like a big headliner, but if we had of these three that are here, I think this is the closest to like a headlining IP.
Yeah, I
Um,
think this and Ghostbusters are pretty close, but this one is obviously the more recent, more modern one compared to Ghostbusters, which is based on the new movie, but no one views it as that. People view it as Ghostbusters.
Yeah, and it's the one that I think that has been asked for the most of like of these three. I think that people are like, hey, when's a Quiet Place coming? Like, could they ever pull off a Quiet Place house? This has been talked about a lot. Um, I think it when compared to something like the last couple of years at like Stranger Things and some of these other IPs like Haunting of Hill House and things like that. I honestly think it's better than a lot of those. Like
I do
quite a bit
agree.
better. Quite a bit better than some of those headlining IP type. Um, I don't want to use book report, but because it's not quite a book report, but you know it has that kind of that vibe.
It
You
kinda
know,
is because you go through
yeah,
the movie kinda chronologically from 1 and 2, like, you end at the final moment from 2. Like, I do think this is a book report because you go through all the scenes, um,
yeah,
like, in order. I think there's one that's out of order. I don't know if the Jim death, like, happened that early in the movie. It's, like, one of the first scares you get, and I'm like, "Oh, he's dead already? Alright." I think that might be, like, the one scene that's out of place, maybe? Or we just start really late in the first film. I'm not sure,
right. And I
yeah,
didn't get
yeah.
to experience things like The Shining or American Horror Story or some of these that are seen as like pretty good book report style houses. But I think of the ones that I have seen, this you know like Stranger Things 2 3, Hunting of Hill House, Stranger Things 4. This is pretty good. I think it's a pretty solid house when compared to some of those others.
Definitely gorgeous sets. Maybe some of the best sets of the event. Like there are some tricks they use and some sets here that you look at and you're like, "Whoa, I'm in the movie," which is really quite cool. I think they do a great job with the sets, especially.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely that lake scene. And I know we got that last year with Yeti, but I honestly think it might be done better here than Yeti. I really like the lake scene. I think it's really the effect is done quite well here.
There's even like a moon in the sky if you look up. Like there's some
Yeah,
details in there that you wouldn't think, would be there, but they add them there just for the little touches and it works.
yeah. Any final thoughts on A Quiet Place before we move on?
See, here's the thing. I want to talk about Quiet Place more, but I want to talk about the property right after this a lot more. So I think we should move on to that one.
Let's do it. Because Bustin always makes me feel good.
There it is. Can I have a story real quick? Um,
Yeah,
so obviously that's a huge joke in our Discord server, right? We have a GIF of what I forgot his name, Ray Parker Jr. doing the whole like saying that line, just like it's a GIF, like it's just become not a GIF, like an emoji. It's become a whole thing, like on the Discord server. People love it, because
yeah,
it's funny. It's really funny. When we finished the house the first day, the first time it was our first house. That is the exact line we got, is right as we exited the house, and it's like, all right, perfect. There's
that's
like
great.
literally the whole like speculation season was leading up to that one moment, and I laughed so hard. I could not stop laughing. It was like the perfect, circle moment right there. It was crazy.
Yeah. So okay. So Jonathan, I'm just going to straight up ask you: do you think this house is better than the 2029 version?
I have been an avid, um I don't know, not hater, but been very clear that I've disliked the 29 version on this podcast, on other platforms. Like And in speculations, I made that clear too. This was low, like on hype list, because I did not like 29s. I thought it was a book report of the movie that really had no scares. It wasn't trying to be a haunted house. It was just trying to take you through the movie, which I know for a lot of people really enjoyed that. And I think that's cool and awesome that they got to experience that. It's just not what I'm looking for in a Halloween Horror Nights house. This house said we're going to be a haunted house and not be just a book report of the movie. And my God, it works so well. Ghostbusters is a property that has so many ghosts, so many fun locations, so many like ways to have great effects, and they use them all here more so than they did in 29s. I mean, they have cameos from almost every Ghostbusters film. I think from every Ghostbusters film, actually, there's cameos. They have legitimate scares. I have gotten scared in this house, I think at least once every time I go through it. I could not say the same for 29s. Um, and they have the big moments. Mike, this is important. They have the fucking like firehouse, a full size
Yes,
firehouse, and the Ecto One.
they do. They do. A moving ecto one, and then it literally moves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the moments that they have in here are just they're really big wow moments. I get why people don't necessarily love this house because it's a style of house that just not everyone likes. I think there's a and I don't necessarily think they're wrong. Um but I think there's subjectiveness to HHN fandom. This is just not a style that everyone's going to love. I personally love this type of house. I This is what I go for. I like to go for being able to transport myself just for a few minutes into, um, to being a kid again and seeing the Ecto One and seeing the firehouse and seeing these characters. Well, even if they're from a movie that's not necessarily very good, these characters I fell in love with when I was a kid. And I like to go and be able to just for the 4 minutes that I'm walking through this house, you know, be a kid again and get to see Slimer and get to see the Stay Puff Marshmallow Man, even if it's just these little mini ones, and seeing the Ecto One. I, this is the type of house I like, and I like other types of houses too when we get to it. But I really enjoy this house for what it is.
Now, do you think it's better than 29s?
Was a proponent of 29. I think it was like a mid tier house for that year because I think that's a really solid year. But I do think it's better than 29. Yes, I think for their bigger moments. I think in 29. I think 29. I feel like the Stay Puff scene was kind of a bit of a letdown, and kind of the finale in general. The Keymaster scene and stuff like that, just kind of a bit of a letdown. But this one, I think the big moments are really quite amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they all hit. It's no matter who you are, like seeing those things for the first time is gonna give you a little bit of a nostalgia, like whoa, oh my god, like because they pull it off. They actually do pull it off, and my favorite thing about this house is that it is scary. And Mike, you haven't been the second week, but let me tell you, when you get into that dark room with all the ghosts, they have learned very, very quickly how to wreck your shit. I've walked
Oh,
in that room and I got double scared immediately. Both ghosts coming for my ass, like just straight up, like their hands in my face. And then I start like running because they're like getting close, and then the library ghost comes out and chases me out of the room. Like
oh, that's great. I love
they
that library ghost. By the way they do that and where they put her there, I think that's a really great way to put like an iconic moment
I
into the
completely
house.
agree. And you get to relive it because all the Ghostbusters do in that scene is run away from her, and that's essentially what she's doing. She's literally chasing you out of the room like the movie, and she's scary. Like it's literally perfect. And the Garakas, if they can get you, they really get you because those stilt performers are not afraid to put their hands very close to you. All of them, especially the last Stinger one. I remember my first run, my girlfriend
Yeah.
was in front of me, and we were like having a good time, and we exit. Garaka's there hand right in front of her face, and she just like she it was legitimate scare, like, oh my god, you know, like it they improved the one thing I really wanted them to, in that they're gonna make a Ghostbusters house, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have to be scary. Like, it's not scary in tone because it's Ghostbusters, but it has jump scares that are effective. And that's all I want. And I think they delivered on that, at least for me. I've been very scared sometimes going through that house.
Yeah, I'm gonna admit it wasn't necessarily like I didn't ever get any jump scares, but I haven't experienced this house as much as you, so it excites me for you to tell me that there's actually some solid jump scares. I would say the only criticism I have is that I think the casting of some of the characters is not perfect,
Mhm.
and enough that for me to be like, who what character is that supposed to be? I do get a little bit confused a little bit, just based, and I know that, like, if the people don't walk into the casting, then you got what you got. Like, you can't get perfect Stranger Things 28 casting every time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not going to happen.
Mhm.
So you're stuck with what you have. I do think the casting is a little bit confused. It's just a bit confusing about who is supposed to be who with some of these roles, especially when it comes to ages. Like, a lot of like younger characters are supposed to be playing older characters, and it just gets a little confusing for me who's supposed to be who. I'm not going to single out anyone because I'm not going to name actually any people because these are real like people, and I don't want them to get their feelings hurt. But I do
Mhm.
think the casting is confusing a little bit about, and pulls me out personally, about the immersion when I'm trying to be like, who's that supposed to be? That's my only criticism in this one.
I do understand that 100%. But I did also want to ask you, the last thing is that, what was your favorite cameo slash Easter egg or effect, whatever you want to pick, from this house? If you were to pick one thing that just was like, not the big moments, like straight up like things where it's like, whoa, that's there. You know, not talking about like Ecto One or the firehouse, but like little things.
I'm gonna be honest. I haven't really got to see this house enough to pick out some of the smaller things. So I'm gonna have to pick a somewhat big thing, and that's the library ghost.
Yes.
Seeing her there, it was just like when I first saw it. I'm like, yeah, I love seeing, because they utilize her way better than they did in the first house, I think.
I completely agree. That's a great choice. Mine has to be another cameo character. That being Vigo, the Carpathian, like locked in the containment cell, like I guess being studied on.
Mhm.
Vigo's just like, first you see him, like the window becomes transparent, and you see Vigo, and it's like, what the fuck? Why is Vigo here? Huh? And then he pops out, and I can't help but cheer every time he comes out, because just like, I can't believe they have the main villain from Ghostbusters 2 locked in a little fucking cell, like in Frozen Empire, for the awesome cameo. Like, they have him in the house. They found a way to fit him in. And it's so amazing. It's so awesome as someone who does enjoy that movie. And I clap every single time. I think Vigo is, like, the fact that they put him in there is so awesome and so incredible. And I mean, that's
I
my
like that
favorite
moment
like
too. Yeah.
cameo. And have you
You get a
noticed
little bit of Ghostbusters too in there for sure.
there's a lot of Ghostbusters too, and have you noticed that a lot of the Stay Puffs, the mini puffs, like, move?
Yes, I did notice that. Yeah, they're like little like little animatronics. Yeah,
It's so cool. Like, I literally thought
they're
they
like
were just
wind
gonna be
up or something.
stationary, but they're not. Like, so many of them, like, are either going side to side or around in a circle, or their little heads and arms are moving. It's so cool.
It's very cute. It's very fun. I like the little Stay Puffs.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I could go on and on and on about this house, but we should probably move on to something a lot darker and a lot
Yes.
scarier.
Well, let's move on to Insidious the further. I'm interested to hear from you, Jonathan, because last week when we talked, you had this bottom five. I want to see, has it? Where do you feel it is now?
It has moved up 1 spot, so now it is in the top 5. It's
Top
literally
5.
5.
Okay.
Um,
I
and
feel like that's solid for this year. I think that's fine. Totally fine.
yeah, and the thing is, I think the only reason it moved was because I got the perfect run, not with myself. I feel like I'm cursed. And I'm usually the one of the easiest people to ever get scared. And I have not really gotten a single scare in this house ever. And I just think it's a scenario where there's people in front of me and behind me that look more scared. So the actors go for them. And I'm
Mm,
just like, oh, I'm seeing people get scared. It's a scary time. I'm just I have like a shield around me that for some reason the actors aren't going for me. So that's the
interesting.
yeah, but I got a run where I didn't just see a random person get scared. I saw Jonathan from the Hotline experience Insidious for the first time, and that was such a fun run because I got to see someone I know like get wrecked in there, which was really fun. I mean, that's incredible, awesome. It was super funny. I mean, he had a fantastic time. He loved the house. And that put it up for me where because it's like, listen, I know I'm not the one getting scared. I'm not the one getting targeted. And like that sucks and it happens. But I'm so grateful that other people are able to be getting those runs and those experiences, even if I'm not getting them, that I'll put it up one more because I feel like the house deserves it because it's working. It's just not working for me for some odd reason because I am cursed.
Yeah, no, I love this house. And I really hope I continue to love it. I think I will. Um and it's hard to put my finger on exactly what I love about it because I don't love this I don't love this IP. Like I have no affinity for it. I had it for number 10 for that reason. It's just something about I think the it's just the intensity and how intense these characters are. I think they take their jobs like incredibly seriously. There's like especially the red demons in particular, like those last couple red demons, they get so into their job. Like there's a one that like he scurries in and out of his boo hole and just in a way that's both terrifying and absolutely hilarious like at the exact same time. Like I don't know how to describe it. It's just one of those things you just have to see. He's like it's almost like he's like embodying like a rat or something. Like it's really fun. And I just love it. I just love this house. I really want to continue to love it. I could but I couldn't honestly tell you exactly what is in the secret sauce. I have to admit
Mhm.
because
I think
you
it's the
know it's
actors. Like, straight up, I think the actors are what are making this or what is making this house so damn good. Because I think you're right. On paper, like, there are scary scenes and there are, some sets and stuff, but I wouldn't say any of them are, like, mind-blowing, but it's the actors using what they have to their advantage to really, like, work in their space that I think
yeah.
for a lot of people is making this, like, really high for them.
I think it's a fun layout too. I think that they give you some pretty intense style stuff right from the beginning that kind of really just amps up your anxiety. Like to
Mhm.
have because usually the what is this character type of room that's usually like a end type of thing where they put it near the end, kind of as a finale. They put that pretty early on here where they put a bunch of static figures and have a couple of real characters in a room with static figures. They put that in very early in this one, and I think that is a type of a room that really gets people nearly every time. I think that really helps to have some of those kind of iconic haunted house scary moments to have those early on.
And then they do it again. They're like, like, bitch, did you think that was it? Nope. Here's
Yeah,
another room,
they do it again. They do it twice. Yes.
and it's not even the finale.
Yeah.
Like that's really really fun. I do think that like they mastered with this house the ability to get people really nervous really fast because I think that opening hallway with the big red door
Yeah.
is really unnerving for a lot of people. For me, it was kind of funny because I mean it's the best use of that hallway I think ever. It was kind of funny for me because I was joking like the whole preseason like Is it just gonna be like, another red door, and the first thing we see is a giant fucking red door? I was laughing a lot, but I also think, like, but that's because of a personal joke. I actually think it's such an incredible way to open the
It
house,
is.
and
I honestly think that's the best hallway they've had there.
mhm.
I can't think of like I I know a lot of people like Tooth Fairy, the way they did that and that facade. I think way they utilize it and tell the story, building up to that red door, and you just get closer and closer, um, and the forced perspective of that door. It's really great. I really like what they do here.
It's very good, and another one of my favorite scenes because it's, once again, it's 5, I like it, I don't get scared in it, which is why it's a little lower. Because I do think getting scared is a huge proponent of why this is very high for a lot of people, um, but another one of my favorite things is the little hint that you're about to see the red demon with the lanterns or, like, with the lights. It's like, "Oh, get ready," and then the wall becomes transparent. Up, get ready. And then you start entering the red curtains and you start hearing Tiptoe from the Tulips play like ever so
Oh
slowly,
yes.
growing louder and louder and louder. And for people who know what that is, it's like, ah, shit, here we go. It's really good at building up that momentum and suspense about for what's going to happen.
I agree. I also think this house is really long. I don't like it seemed like incredibly long for an HHN house. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's just its intensity and it's not actually long, but I it feels like it's just like it goes on like once you think it's about to be over, it's no, you got a couple, you got a minute or two left.
No, I really think it's literally long, and I feel like a great like proof of this is how short Triplets of Terror is because it's in the same soundstage. I think Insidious has taken up most of that soundstage. I think it's in what I think it might be the longest house this year.
Yeah, I do think that triplets is quite a bit shorter. So I think you're probably right. I think they just wanted to make Insidious long, and they kind of stole from triplets. Now that you mentioned that, that sounds that tracks for sure.
Now, I guess the last question before we talk about this property forever, and I think it is important, is that a lot of HHN veterans and just people who've been going to HHN for a long, long time. I mean, Duff, for instance, have this at number one. Like, number one, an IP over originals, maybe for one of the first times, like, in a long time, not in a Monsters IP, an actual just legit Blumhouse IP, number one. Why do we think that is? Why do we think for a lot of people that who've been going to HHN for such a long time, this has topped, like, almost unanimously, the list here?
Well, at least for me, I think a lot of it is the surprise factor of just how good it is. I was not expecting much at all. I had this at number 10. So the fact that just I think the extreme nature of just how good it is, I think the surprise factor is always going to make at least initially, in the first couple of weeks, it's gonna make it feel um better than it is. I'll be interested to see if it holds up, at least for me. But I think that plays a factors, because I think there was a lot of talk about this one being potentially a negative house, and just the fact that it turned out to be so good, I think that plays a role. I also think it's some of the things that we've already listed about the length and the layout and the cast. It all just kind of comes together in this perfect soup of just like just a really solid quality style HHN house that you yeah, it's themed around an IP that's people either like or don't like, or even apathetic towards. It all just kind of just comes together and it makes this really solid house that just transcends and its IP, in my opinion.
It absolutely does. It is the best, in my opinion. I have not experienced 25s, but I think it is the best way you could ever make an Insidious house based on the franchise. I cannot see a better way, to be honest. I think this is a perfect, like, in terms of talking about adaptation of an IP, this is a perfect adaptation of an IP.
Yeah. And
But
I
let's
I
oh,
honestly
yeah?
think, well, just I think honestly think, um, like this house actually makes the characters from Insidious, at least for me, their utilization in this house, makes them scarier than they actually were in the actual film franchises. Like, because I don't necessarily find some of these um these villains to be that scary. Like, I don't think the Woman in Black to me is that scary of a an IP icon, but the way she's utilized in this is fantastic, and it's terrifying. I don't think the Red Demon is that scary of it, and like a horror icon, but the way it's utilized in this is really good, especially the man who can't breathe or whatever. He's very scary in this, with the way they have him sitting, and just kind of like on that platform, and just it's just utilized very well. Maybe it's just kind of one of those things that's like, it once you experience it, um like you get to see it face to face, like that makes like the element of scariness, at least for me, much higher. I know a lot of people find these movies incredibly scary. I'm not necessarily one of those people.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat here. They definitely work better for me in a haunted attraction, in a haunted house, than they do on the screen. Especially because 'cause they're not always just trying to strangle you in the house. They do a little couple other things.
Right, right.
I love the get character whose name is the man who can't breathe. That's like the funniest name for a character. Hey, can't breathe. You know. I think I say that
I
every
like
time I
that
enter
he's
his
like,
room.
I like that he's like, Donald Duck in it too.
He
He's like,
is. Oh god, he does. You're
he is. He's
100%
like,
right.
like, I don't know if he's like that in the movie, but in the house, he's totally Donald Duck in it.
Yes. He definitely is. Oh my goodness.
Like, is he wearing like tidy whities? Like, I haven't. I just see his his legs. I don't know what he's got on.
You
I'm
really
assuming he
it's
has
it's what
something
you
underneath.
notice. You walk in like, "Oh, that's a leg. All right."
You know, that man's got no pants on.
I think that's a perfect segue. No, it isn't. It's not a segue at all. But let's move on to the next house here, sharing this soundstage, which is our I think our first no, our second original we're covering, and that is Triplets of Terror. Now, Mike, is this the concept that we got, the house that we got, what you were expecting this house to be?
I've been all over with this place, like, this house, like, preseason. I when it first announced, I was like, "What the fuck are with this?" And then I heard people like kind of be like, "No, no, no! It's the blood moon of the year. Like, these sets are going to be incredible. Like, just wait. The they're going to be so elaborate sets. Like, this is the rumored big sets house." And then we got like, um leaked pictures of it from, Unmasking the Horror. I was like, ah, shit. Like, this is what we're getting. Like, we're just getting like the hoarder house where they just like empty as much stuff as they can put into a scene to make it like look like, is that what we're getting here? Like, and then I actually experienced it, and I think it actually works better than I expected, when those unmasking pictures came out. Um, it's not my favorite, just because I do think, it doesn't all come together for me compared to some of these others, but it's still a really solid house. I'm excited to see where it lands once I get some runs. I think the the characters here and this characters, I think, you have to say this, similar to Insidious, maybe not quite the intensity level, but they're having a lot of fun. These characters, you can tell they really like these roles that they've been given. They like the backstory. They really have embraced the story, here, and you can tell that they really enjoy the story that they're telling.
Oh
Um,
yeah, 100%. They're like the actors I think are the best part of this house, which actors are usually the best part of every house, but I mean these actors like give so much character to the scenes that they're in because they have a lot of freedom. They're not just a lot of them are triggers, but a lot of them could just sort of stand out of their boo holes and like I think one of the characters, I think it's Melody, but I might be wrong. I don't remember the names of the triplets exactly. Like does a dance and like interacts with you a little bit where it's like, "Oh, that's kind of fun." That doesn't usually happen. Um when there's another triplet that's more, you know, that's more evil and more just sort of standing there and staring at you. And then there's the big guy, Junior, who just is like, "Look, I killed someone. Isn't that funny?" Like I think they all have their interesting character, and the character is what's helping this house stay near the middle for me instead of lower. Because I think the character is what's sort of keeping it at a steady level for now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I will have to admit that the story necessarily isn't doing anything for me. Um, and I'm not necessarily a big fan of the podcast scene. I'm not gonna lie. I think, or like the and I'm also not a big fan of like putting a lot of the story just like by putting like things that you actually have to read because one, you don't have time to read it. And two, like I think it's just kind of a cheap way to try to tell the story. So I don't necessarily love that portion of it where they have like these news articles that that if you go through it unmasking the horror, you're probably going to get a lot of lore and a lot of story. But when you're actually again, I'm not going to harp on it. When you're only going to experience this house once, how much story are you really going to get out of putting a giant news article with a bunch of lore? Um, I'm not a huge fan of necessarily that. I think it works sometimes, and other times it doesn't work. I think case files, I think works, but I don't necessarily think it works too much here. But I do think that, like you said, the characters and the characters really transcend the the way that they tell the story.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna be honest. I was kind of expecting when HHN was like, "Oh, we always have IP slashers, but this time we're gonna do our own thing," for them to get a little more interesting with it. With their slasher, because like, oh, they don't usually make their own slashers, so I'm excited to see they keep hyping up about like this is HHN style. Get ready, and then you look at it, you're like, I mean, it's good. It's okay. It's interesting. It's a cool story. It doesn't necessarily blow me out of the, like water like I was expecting. It's kind of just a little fun story. I do think that like even if you do take the podcast element out of it, I think it's told pretty well. Like I think you'll understand by that last scene what's going on. Where it's like, oh, why are they doing killing those people? Oh, they're recreating the first day. Like, okay, like I get it now because it's the happy birthday. It's the same set, just
Right.
done in a different way. Like, I do think you'll get enough of it for it to work no matter what. Um, but yeah, I do agree. There are some weird choices. Like the podcast, I feel like should have been playing throughout the entire house almost. Like if they wanted that to be a big thing, it could almost be like you're listening to what happened, like the podcasters recounting the
Yeah, that
next
would have been
murder,
good.
and you're
Yeah.
like almost like you're listening to the podcast, you're not actually experiencing it, you're not there, but you're as you're walking, like maybe like you're having like a long walk down a road, you're just like you sort of zone out, like you're just sort of in that environment, you're imagining what it looks like. um like that would have been a cool aspect. I still like it. I still think it has some great sets. Even if they're not Dead Man's Pier level, I do think it has some quality sets, and there are some fun places that we do, and there's fun kills and environments. But I'm not overly impressed with the whole like this is our slasher, our time. It's like it's an okay story. It's good. It's not as brutal as I was expecting. That they were sort of like hinting at. Um, but at the end of the day, I think I would have honestly had this a lot higher, and I still think it's good. I want to clarify. I think it's a good house, but I would have had this higher. I'm just not usually allowed to be negative on it because I'm with a lot of friends that like have this really high, like number one. So I'm always just like, yeah, it's good, guy, and I do really like it. But I guess I'm just like sort of letting the venting out a little bit because I'm not really able to usually talk about this. Um,
Right.
but
Right.
um, but I do think the main problem here, is that Insidious takes up too much space at the soundstage, and so Triplets gets nothing. And it's not Triplets' fault, but it's unfortunate because the house, like, when it really starts getting good and you're like, okay, now we're here, we're really going, now we're really here. Up, it ended. All right, you know, house is done, and it's not the fault of the house. It's just the way the space was allocated, and it happens. It sometimes happens when you share a soundstage. So it's still pretty good, not mind blowing. It's fun, and I do think the actors, and potentially if they keep getting more intense as the run goes on, it could rise up my list for sure. Just right now, it's kind of mid tier. It's good. It's okay. I know some people have this at like the bottom, like 10, like F, and it's like I don't think it's that.
It's
I
not there
forgot
for
where it
me
was for
yet,
you.
but it's not. It's like eight, like 7 or 8.
And I think that's a fair placement,
But
yeah.
it might end up bottom for me
You
because
think
I just
so?
it might because I think that there I might fall some of the things that I had lower might potentially um, I might fall in love with them. That they have, I think they have a better chance potentially of clicking for me because they were things that
Interesting.
because they are things and that I expected to like and didn't quite like, and I think that because of that again that dramatic shift of like I expected this to be great and I'm kind of disappointed has it lower on my initial list because it just feels worse, whereas this is I didn't sort of expected to like this and I still love it but it's a little bit better than I thought. That it'll be interesting to see after I run this where this lands. um
Absolutely.
One last thing, as I know I said the last week, but I want to say this week, I'm still holding out hope that we actually get an actual full on fake true crime podcast. Like that would be
Mhm.
such a fun way to get the whole backstory of what these triplets like, recreate the entire murder night in like a true crime podcast, like give it and release it as one of your Destination Universal um or Discover Universal podcast. Like that would be such a fun way to give us the entire backstory. It's just do a faux true crime podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's you to honestly say out of every house HHN has ever done, this is the one that's the made most for a podcast.
Yeah,
Just because of the way it's told. So I completely agree. I'd love for one to pop out eventually. I know the latest one we got was from Hollywood for Monstros 2, and I'm kind of worried because I'm like, are we getting any more Orlando ones? Maybe not. But I'm holding out hope too, because I think even if it's a later in the season thing, if they just want to release it in October, I'd be happy. I just want something like that because I think it would honestly maybe improve the experience of the house if you get to
I
listen to
think
the
it would.
podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would.
All right, now that we're done with triplets, do you want to head on over to meet with friends? I mean, our friend Vin Diesel over at Fast and Furious.
How dare you? This is so much better. Oh baby, I love this house. Yes, I know we talked about it a lot last time. Because we actually got to discuss it a little bit more. But let's discuss it again. I can talk about this for hours.
Oh, absolutely. So I guess let's put it into I don't know, a couple of questions, right? And the first thing is that there have been a lot of houses in the past that have been in the scare zone to house category. And I guess making it easier, just doing solely originals. Where do you think, like, you don't have to make an exact ranking, but where do you think this would rank among them? Because I know your favorite house of all time is a scare zone
It
to
is.
original.
It is. It does a good job for sure. I don't know. I'm not ready to say that it's my favorite house of all time. I need some more runs to say that, but it does a darn good job. Um, I think, and it's funny because I feel like this one has a lot of, for those who never got to experience Stars and Steam, it has some Stars and Steam aesthetics to it, a little bit. And I mentioned that I believe last week as well. It has the same feel as Stars and Steam. a
Mhm.
little bit.
No, I mean, even to me as someone who hasn't been, to HHN during those times and is relatively a new person, I walked through this house going, this feels like an old HHN house in the best ways. Obviously modernized with more, gadgets and stuff and effects and the stuff that we know now in modern HHN times, but I mean, all the sets feel so grimy, so disgusting, so claustrophobic. It feels like what Salazin's theme sounds like to me because I don't really have a lot of videos to look at it, but it almost like I don't know if that makes sense, but being in the house almost feels like I'm in something like Sazin's team or Giggles and Gore, just
Yeah.
the way it looks.
Definitely, it definitely, and I would say the difference with Stars and Steam is that Stars and Steam definitely had like a Bioshock aesthetic, at least especially at the beginning. Like the story was like you're getting lured to this utopia. So it has like this very, um, very similar to a kind of a Bioshock style feel, and then you get the more you go into it, you realize you're just you're in this really um, just grungy like a warehouse, kind of similar to this. So I would say that that's the main difference is that this doesn't quite have that same Bioshock feel, but it definitely has some elements to Saws and Steam that feels great. It feels good.
There's like a crusher on like one of the heads that's like
Hmm.
almost like
Yep.
squeezing him, and I can
Yep.
only think of like those little moments in Sazin's scene where they're
Yep.
squishing to get the
Yep.
blood out.
Yeah, the iconic, yep, the iconic hallway where you would walk down the hallway and they would have those squishers going and just squishing them, the blood and the meat.
Or
That's the one of the main things I remember of Saws and Steam is that iconic hallway that you would walk down, and we just have those just going. You know, it, honestly think that was a very intentional ode to Saws and Steam. The,
Oh, 100%. Like it had to be, right? And I do have another question about the sets, right? As we mentioned before, this is a very more realistic, claustrophobic factory approach to this house compared to what I think a lot of people were expecting, which was the fantastical Willy Wonka parody style of house. Are you happy it went this direction, or would you have rather them done more, Glasgow Willy Wonka experience type? Obviously not that, but just like weird Willy Wonka parody type thing.
I think that was a pie in the sky. Like I think we just knew that that level of scale just wasn't going to happen.
Mhm.
So I still think it would be fun to get a Willy Wonka um, parody house at some point in a couple of 50, 25 years. I mean, this is probably the closest we're going to get. I'm glad they didn't, to be honest. I think what they did here with the leaning more into the 50s and leaning to that element of it, I like really like what they did here. I don't think I think if they leaned into the scale, it wouldn't have worked. I think what they did here really works.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of scale, speaking of location, I said it before, but I do eat my words, because they figured out how to make this location work, and the answer was to not try to do anything big, not try to do anything grand. What they're gonna try is claustrophobic house with a lot of detail. I think the tents got an upgrade too, in terms of like just they cost a lot more in the permits, and I feel like that's for like a lot of like the effects they're able to use in here. Maybe they couldn't in the past tense. Like even the spinning gears and stuff. I feel like maybe like there's stuff in those tents that allow that to happen compared to you know like Chucky and Black Phone. Um, but they use the tents to their advantage. They're claustrophobic. They're tight. They use the space well, and they not only say, "Oh, we're just going to make it claustrophobic, and that's how we'll fit it." They have details all around you because the tent is so small, they can have details when you're looking up without like blowing the budget. Like they can have like gears spinning around you or taffy, strung like just going in a circle over and over again and spinning and stuff like that, or have a projection of a mouse, like a little shadow projection, like walking above you, like you're underground. Like they could do that because the tight the spent the tent is so small and it's so cool. That's one of my favorite parts about this house. How everywhere you look, there's a new detail, there's a new effect, there's a new thing to see. No matter how many times you go through, you're going to see something new.
Definitely. Definitely. And I think that is looking at the numbers of our like our YouTube walkthroughs, this one just quite a bit is the most popular one compared to the others. So I don't know if it's going to end up as the most popular house of the year, just kind of overall where people put it. But when it comes to the numbers of people watching the walkthroughs, this one is outpacing the others by quite a bit. The second, let's. What do you think the second one is, Jonathan? Just for fun, what do you think is if this is number one? What do you think our number two is?
I'm going to guess Insidious.
You're right. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. That was a good guess. Hey.
What about number three? What do you think our number three is?
Ooh, Slaughter Cinema.
Let me check. Let me check.
'Cause
I
that one
would
had a
guess
really good thumbnail. Duff made a
that
great thumbnail for that one.
I would guess that too. And
Let's see, drum roll.
it is Slaughter Cinema. Yep.
Look at that. All
And
right.
then Monstrose, which makes sense to me.
Yeah, because
That's
some
kind of
people in Hollywood are probably like, what did Orlando do? You know?
yeah.
Let's check that out.
And the Goblin's Feast is rounds up the top five.
Let's go Goblins. Woo! Um, that's fantastic. And Mike, I also love that you pointed out the 50s aspect and the funny aspect, because if we look back, right? This year, more so than other years, has 4 comedy slash dark comedy houses. It has Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, Slaughter Cinema 2, Goblin's Feast, and this house, Major Sweets Candy Factory. What makes this one stand out from the others? And what makes it so we're not like, oh, another comedy house? Like, why does this one feel like it fits perfectly in this lineup? Because I know we both feel the same way about like this works.
I think one, it's the triggers.
Hmm.
I to think two, it's the cohesion. I think it's all kind of comes together pretty well here. I think it's pretty cohesive. I think it's well contained. Um, I I also think it's um, it's hard to put Ghostbusters in there because that one's like and is it I wouldn't necessarily call it like a comedy house.
I
I
guess
don't
it's
know.
not funny compared to the original. It doesn't
It's
have a
not
lot of.
really.
It has like
Yeah,
some like the Winston jokes kind of funny, and I guess I don't
I
know
think it's a
there's a
bit more.
podcast
If it's
joke
more
in there.
lighthearted, but I don't necessarily think it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be funny.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
like yeah, I think you're right.
um, and then and then Slaughter Cinema I agree with, and Goblins I would say I agree with to an extent. I think this one and mostly is the cohesion of it though. It's very concise. It all contained in the triggers for sure.
The triggers are some of the best triggers of this year's event, and they're going to continue to be. I mean, destroy the evidence, or like that's what I call a sugar rush. Like they're so good. They're
Yeah,
you will be smushed. It's perfect.
it's good.
Oh,
Yes.
I have a good story for you reminded me of one of the kids, because one of the kids in the big the stage, the one room with with the big stage when they're sort of showing off them eating the candy or whatnot. There's a trigger there, and I have always been behind my girlfriend who always pushes it and gets me like wet with the trigger because it's like a vomit that sprays
Hmm.
at you, and I'm just like
Yeah.
I'm going in front this time and I'm gonna get you because I can't deal with this anymore. But then I'm in there and the scare actor's like, guess what I'm gonna do? And he pushes the button and gets me wet again. Gets me, like, God damn it. I can't avoid it. I like every time I get sprayed in that room.
Which
But
one?
that
Which one? Which one push? Oh, the one with the big lollipop. That guy. You
yeah, the
mean?
one of the because it was like during a stay in scream, which I need to warn you and everyone, at least for now, all of my stay in scream runs after opening night, there have been no major suites, no mistreats. It's almost a useless house to do during stay in scream if you like, I honestly recommend just go to the back until they fix this. I don't
Oh
know when
no,
they're going
really?
to, but yeah, the house is incredibly poor without those characters. I mean, it's still a good house, but I mean, without a Major Sweets house, without Major Sweets, what are you doing, right? So
It's like
they,
it takes too long for them to get ready. They're just not
I,
quite ready yet.
yeah, I think their makeup is probably a bit more extensive than the others because apparently this has happened like 3 days in a row where they weren't out for Stay and Scream, but they opened the house anyways, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm not doing that one again until that's fixed for Stay and Scream because oh boy, um, because it was Stay and Screaming because it was sort of like it just opened. I think the actor was like, I'm gonna have fun because I think like there was no one in front of us, so they hit the button. I'm like, damn it, so that was a fun moment. But yeah, a lot of the actors are just really like really having fun in their roles too. Major Sweets, Miss Treats is like always dancing and like really like not only like says the voice lines, but you can just like tell the you can just tell what she's saying. Like she has the emotion, she has
Yes.
the everything. Major Sweets is so campy and fun. Taffy looks like he's just there to have a good time. Like there's a fun family dynamic there that just really works, and you feel that in the house with those three characters.
I think I think Miss Sweets really steals the show. I don't remember her really stealing the show from the Scare Zone, but in this she really does. Like I really like Miss Sweets and the way they put her in this house.
Yeah,
Her
no,
moments are really
Mistreats
great.
is like in the podcast, it showed that she was the one that was really behind everything, and she was the one orchestrating it, and Major Sweets was just a pawn, essentially.
Uh huh.
Obviously out of love and stuff, and you know, there's a weird love dynamic there too. I'm pretty sure, or maybe friendship. I don't remember. I haven't listened to that podcast in God knows how long, but I remember that Mistreats was the mastermind, and you can kind of tell. Major Sweets is the one going like, "Oh, you're in the factory, time to die," but Miss Treats is the one actively holding the chainsaw, the one
Right.
actively like getting the weapons to kill.
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah. She's the one that like pushing you in the trash bin to come back to her. With
exactly. If
it.
the kids don't get you, the trash compactor still will. Like, it's so
Yeah. Yeah.
good. They tell the story so beautifully in this little space. They tell the story so effectively, and it's so much fun. And the queue, I mean, we talked about this, but the queue plays the music from the Scare Zone. If you're waiting in there, I think they finally bumped it up where it's playing throughout the entire queue, which is phenomenal. And the house even has like doo-wop, like little songs in it too.
Yeah, it does.
When kids are like killing and people are getting murdered, it just has like boom, 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 boom. It's so stupid, but it works so well. It's such an amazing vibe.
Yeah, I love it. Now, I do think we've talked about it a lot. So let's move on to the
We
next.
have. Yes. Oh, here we go. See, Sweets is your number one, and it was for me too. But spoiler, it's not anymore because
Oh
Goblin's
wow,
Feast came in and said, came in with the right hook and was like, "Here I come." And Goblin's Feast is now my number one house.
wow.
Um,
Well, that's. I mean, it was my number three. So, I it's not like I had it low. So let's
mhm,
talk about Goblin's Feet.
absolutely. So first for you, I want to ask. Goblin's Feast, right? We When the
Uh,
house was announced, we had sort of an idea of what we wanted this to be. Do you think it met your expectations? The reality of the house is the tone, the atmosphere, the way they take the story. Is this where you wanted this house to go?
I honestly didn't know what to expect, and I was worried that they would be a little bit too campy or a little bit too silly, and I don't think it did. It didn't quite do that, which I honestly I'm pretty grateful for that they did at least tried to be scary. I worry that it would be a little bit too goofy for me, and um, I think it does a pretty good job. I wouldn't say this is what I expected. I expected it to be a little bit sillier, but I honestly think it does a pretty good job of what it is.
Yeah, I think it balances the tone perfectly. Like right from the get go. I don't know if you noticed this, but when you have the sign Goblin's Feast, it's sort of like a tapestry, and you look behind it, and it actually says Human Chop House. Like they tricked you into into like a fun Goblin's Feast, but it's actually where they're just gonna kill you. Like right from the get go, there's a joke, and it's dark. It's a dark joke, but it's a joke, and it hits so hard if you notice it. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think the tone hits really well for me because I think they master the art of not only being funny, but also being really terrifying. Because I don't know if you're going to believe me, Mike. I really don't think you're believe me. I don't think anyone else on this podcast or like listening is going to believe me. I think Goblin's Feast is the scariest fucking house this year.
I think it can. Yeah, no, I could see that. I could see with based on some of my runs that I had on Premium Scream Night, I could see how this one it has like, like it has some big moments, but also has some good pinball scares. It has some good like claustrophobic moments. It's pretty darn scary.
The pinball scares in this house. Granted, there's other amazing scares too, where the actors do are not afraid to run up at you with those giant ass costumes. They run up you, they get close to your face. It's terrifying. Please, like, keep doing that. It's so much fun. I love this house. I love getting scared like that. Afraid of like, I my thing. I'm learning that I'm afraid of like big costume people or just bigger people in general, taller people, like a Leatherface or like just a big goblin or whatever, or really anyone who tries to run at me, like no matter the size. But it's usually the bigger scare actors that get me. And so goblins is filled with them, and it's so scary when they don't hold back, and especially in that pinball room. I haven't experienced a pinball room where the actors are actively really working with each other and you could just tell they were plotting something before you enter that room, like goblins. Because like one will hold out their thing, their I think their ball, and it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That wasn't a scare, but that wasn't the point. It was a distraction for the guy on the right to wreck your shit. Then the guy on the left comes back and wrecks your shit again. Like after he was just giving you a ball, he wrecks your shit. Then you exit that room. Then there's another guy who fucking runs at you again, who with this big costume and chases you into the castle. And then I only experienced this one run, but I hope it happens again. But the guy the goblin, I keep saying the goblin who ends the house, who goes like, "And happy goblins feast" or whatever, was in the
Yes.
middle of the fucking walkway and like scared the shit out of me. They weren't in their boo hole. They just came
Really?
all the way out, like in the middle of the guest path to to terrify me, and I almost died. Like they found the ultimate like combo scares in that house to absolutely destroy me, and I experience it almost every single run now. So it's not like a fluke run. No matter what time of day I do it, I usually get a really good run with a couple scares in this house. So yeah, goblins is scary, funny, scenically amazing, all those above, like all the above, but it's the one that gets me the most out of all of the houses so far.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
I want you to experience some of those. I know you probably have a little bit in Premium Screen, but I want you to experience more when you go to the event next time, because it's like I don't know if they just like they were pretty good opening night too, but second weekend they really got their groove, and you could just tell the cooperativeness and the teamwork that they're using to completely destroy the guests, and it's fantastic.
After Premium Scream that night, this was my number one. I don't know if you knew that this was my number one house after Premium Scream.
Mhm.
I think there were some things that were missing from my opening night runs that made it drop, but I really liked this house, especially on Premium Scream.
And yeah, I mean, I know one of the things that worked for you, I think it did, was the giant hand, right?
Yes, yes.
It has not worked since. So week 2, there was no change to the giant hand. It's just a strobe. So I'm not sure what's
Oh,
going on with
I
that. I
think
don't
it's
know if
probably
that's just
broken forever. I
either
guess.
broken or a safety hazard or something. I'm not sure.
Probably, I have heard, yeah, that it was like whacking people, at um, it was
Premium
hurting
Scream
like
or team
a
member.
premium team member preview, but they had it going at Premium Scream, so maybe it was just also hit people at Premium Scream. So they're like, hey, this is not going to work. Like, team member, they're like, let's give it one more night. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but it was really cool when it worked. It was really cool. I'm sad. It does honestly takes a little bit away the fact that it's that's broken for me.
And that's my one like week 3 wish for like a change because we really haven't. We made this episode a long time ago because we thought there were going to be like a bunch of big changes this week, but it didn't really happen. It just the houses have gotten either more intense or obviously yeah, how they usually are, but there's no big change like the hand working. I'm hoping for week 3 that the first time I walk in the goblins, that hand like comes out like out of nowhere and I get the biggest scare from it. I'm praying that that happens because I think that'd be
Yeah,
incredible. But yeah, Goblin's absolutely fantastic house, and this is one of the new houses in the new Sprung tents, which I don't think we've even like discussed that much, but it's a whole new area now. It's like Hollywood's H lot where you go in the back and you do a little walk and then you have two houses right there and you don't have to go all the way around to do both. You can kind of do both in that same area before you have to leave. Um
absolutely love that. Absolutely love it.
it's so much better than the parade buildings. Like not in terms of like parade buildings quality, but like in terms of that walk, it's so much better and makes so much more sense for guests.
Yes. I've always thought that they could try to do something like that with parade buildings. I don't know logistically, but I always like hope, not thought necessarily, just kind of hoped. They're like, I'm already back here. Let me just get in line for the other one. They found a way to make it work for this.
They absolutely did. And I think Goblins out of the two houses, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think it uses the it proves how much the tents can really do like with in terms of sets and scale and like, just I mean, yeah, sets and scale the main thing and length. Are you excited to see how these tents are implemented in the future? Cuz I'm going to tell you these are the future. I would not be unhappy if the sprung tents we have now, the original sprung tents, they find a way to replace them with these babies because I think these are incredible.
I love these tents. Yeah, no, I think that they're a bit shorter than the parade buildings. I'm not gonna lie, they at least feel that way. But I'm, I mean, obviously, like that's fine. Like, not everything has to be super long. Um, the scale is there. That's for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. Um, do we want to say anything else about Goblin's Feast before we move on to the next tent?
No, I think that basically covers it.
Perfect. So let's just move right on to Universal Monsters, Eternal Bloodlines, and I want you to take this one, Mike, because I know I'm a little more negative on it than you are. So I want you to start off with the with your thoughts about it, just in general. Um, Particularly on the story. Again, that's our first point we wrote here. Like, because this is out of all the houses, this is one of the narrative houses this year, right? Zuri has a narrator throughout. There's a story going on. What are your thoughts on the story and how they execute it in the house?
I like the story. I do think that it's heavily reliant on kind of having a little bit of an idea of what's going on, because if you don't know who like Saska Van Helsing is, then you're gonna be like, who is this person? Like like it is a bit required to have at least a little bit of like you have done your homework. That being said, I do like the story, and I do think it's utilized pretty well here. I like the plot twist. I think that's lot of fun. I wasn't expecting it. I think again another like it's only gonna get you once, but when it gets you that first time that I'm like, oh shit, they killed her off. I think it's a really fun moment in this house.
Yeah. Um, I I can't say usually I go like, "Oh, I agree." I can't do it for this house. I can't do it. I
Well,
just listened
so
to
yeah, so tell me why doesn't it work for you?
I just listened to the Catacombs episode, actually, like I said, and I think Hunter and I share a lot of similar thoughts. Because what he was saying, I'm like, "Oh, you're taking the words right out of my mouth, and you're gonna say it a lot better than I am." I just think they're shoving so much into one house when it isn't needed. I think if this house solely was just based on Saskia's journey and getting revenge uh, of the of the Bride of Dracula for killing Van Helsing, no, sorry, Dracula's daughter for killing Van
Right,
Helsing, that would have been a perfect story on its own and could have done so much. But instead, we have to shove in two other monsters. We have to shove in the mummy,
right.
Anksunamun, and we have to shove in the she wolf. So it's like, okay, now we got to go to Egypt. And it's like, all right, we're back. It's time for Egypt again. We keep going to Egypt. It's time again.
Yeah,
And I don't think the Egypt scene's really effective in this one because the main big scare can't really do anything. Um, but you go to Egypt, and it's like, all right, time to fight the she wolf. And then by the time you get to the Dracula's daughter, your house is almost over, and it's like, oh, okay, all right. But it's not just that. It's also the fact that we have to put Bride in here and make it a sequel to The Bride of Frankenstein Lives. We're not just putting in the character of Bride of Frankenstein and saying this is a new story. We're saying this is a direct sequel to one of my favorite Monsters House of all time, and I think everyone would agree one of the best narratively told stories
right.
HHN has done. And that story was focused all on Bride, like, from being birthed, essentially, waking up to, and basically getting smarter and more intelligent and growing and becoming a badass, and slaying vampires on her own and doing everything she could, learning to learn that the vampire blood causes will help Frankenstein come back to life. So then putting them in stockades and draining their blood and doing all this stuff on her own is a fucking powerful character, to bring Frankenstein back to life, and is one of the most interesting, amazing, powerful stories that HHN has ever told. And your first introduction to her in this house is her crying because a terrible Frankenstein mannequin. I'm sorry, but it looks bad. Frankenstein just, you look at him and he's dead immediately. He just died by like a little animatronic hand coming out of his stomach. And it's like, what the hell? And she's just crying in pain and agony. And it's like, oh, okay, all right. And then, she does some battling and she's like, okay, we're getting there again. And then at the end, she's just crying in pain and agony again and is helpless. And it's like, oh, it feels like we're sort of going backwards on the, like, how incredible she was in the first house. Now, like, I think Hunter put it really, like, honestly, really nicely. She's now a side character in this, like a sidekick to Saskia, and isn't, like, I don't know, like, doesn't feel as interesting anymore. It just feels like, most of the times we see her, most of the words she says are just her helpless and crying, and it sucks. It really sucks, and it's annoying being like such a fan of the original house. And the thing is, you can do this story right. I really do think that it honestly could have worked if the Frankenstein death was impactful. Because to me, I don't know if you agree, Mike, the Frankenstein death kind of just happens out of nowhere. It's not an actor, it's a mannequin that just dies, and it's like,
Right.
"Oh, I guess he's dead now." Okay, for something that she spent the whole other house bringing him back to life, he gets such a, like, they forgot about him. It's like, "We just gotta kill him, so there he's dead now." It feels like the whole climax of the house was just utterly destroyed in a matter of 1 second, and it
Okay.
wasn't even done well, in my opinion.
So I definitely agree with the majority of what you said, but I'm going to propose this question. Um, do you think for 90% of the people who go through the house that the story really matters to them at all and they just want to see some iconic characters in some iconic tableaus, and the story is more there, just to kind of tie it all together?
I think it is important to the general audience because even if you don't tie it with Bride of Frankenstein Lives, because honestly, all this is tied to Bride of Frankenstein Lives. Most guests don't know what that is. So like taking that out of the equation, because yes, that is my bias, even though it's on them because they said it's a sequel to Bride of Frankenstein Lives. So we as HGN fans are going to look into it that way. But like, let's say I didn't know Bride of Frankenstein Lives it was a thing. I just saw Bride and Frankenstein. I'd probably be like, oh, like I feel like the scenes that are impactful, like Saskia dying, right? Impactful scene. Wow, what a twist. You don't see her die. You don't see the death. You don't see she was working this whole house to achieve her
Right.
goal, and you don't even get the courtesy of seeing how she died.
Right,
Like,
right. And if you happen to not be timed outright, you might not even know that she did die. I do
I
agree
didn't
with you.
know she died the first run I did because I didn't even comprehend that that head was her. because it didn't make any sense to me.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I was like, why would that be the way they showed our main character, like, dying? Because I got spoiled. I knew she was gonna die, but I'm like, that's how she died. You know, I feel like even most people who don't know the story of Bride or whatever are gonna be pretty pissed about that because it's not like I like the twist of her dying. I'm not against a tragedy. I'm not against how the house ends with the monsters going after Bride. I think that's interesting. But I don't think the house deserves those plot twists because they don't actually earn them, in my opinion. They're just ideas that happen without any good buildup, without any good story moments that actually feel impactful. And it feels like ideas that on the surface are interesting and could be told well, but since there's so much shoved in here, they don't have enough time to actually let that sink into the guest. So it's kind of just things that happen, and it to me that hurts because Bride was so narratively driven and so perfectly told. Imagine the feeling you had seeing the Bride of Frankenstein, uh, like Frankenstein's dead body under her, her crying, her screams of pain. Like that's like, but like you sat there for a minute. That facade really gave you time to like experience what happened to her. You felt the emotion, right? The stockades that the vampire was in, such a minor character. The Bride of Dracula was in stockades. You heard her cries and agony, and you saw the blood getting poured out of her and like taken out of her in the stockade. You're like, wow, that's man, Bride's the protagonist, but we're feeling bad for the, whatever. Like you're feeling emotion. I can't tell you any emotion I felt in this house besides, oh, they did it this way. All right. Like I kind of just felt anger towards like the way the story was told. And it's unfortunate because I think the story itself is a good idea. I just don't think it was executed the way they wanted to because they had to also put the mummy in. They had to also put the she wolf in. They had to make sure it was tied to Van Helsing, but they also had to make sure it was tied to Bride. And I think there was too much for this tent to hold. I don't think it was. I think they overestimated how much they could throw in here with everything still working narratively. I think as a house itself, people walk through and enjoy it and think it's a if you're not looking for any of that, but as someone who is, because I mean, I'm a HHN fan, I know others are too, like who really like try to focus on that type of stuff. It's annoying. It's really
Yeah.
annoying, and it feels like they almost didn't really care about the Bride of Frankenstein Lives story, but they just included it because it was popular. And so why not, you know?
I definitely get where you're coming from, but I do think he kind of hit the nail on the head where that the majority of the people who walk through this are gonna mostly there to have the iconic characters, the uh, fun special effects, and get some solid scares. And I think when you put all that together, I think that house it does check those boxes for what the majority of the people are trying to get out of a HHN house. That is
It
a unit,
does.
especially a Universal Monsters house.
It absolutely does. And to say some positive things about it, because I feel like I've been ragging on it, I think the facade and the way they start the story is really well done. I think it's incredibly well done. They need to lower that Snope because oh my god, it keeps going in my throat and I start coughing in that scene.
Yeah,
Um, but I think it's a very powerful just like image of like her over the grave. And it's like, okay, you feel that you already got the motivation right there. I think that's told well. I think there are some interesting scares, some interesting like settings that we go through. Once again, you can still like the once you walk into that castle, it's like, oh shit, this is huge. Like there are
right.
some great moments here for sure. My main problem is narratively the story, and that is the story and where we go, kind of essentially, and that is my main flaw. But it's not egregiously bad. Once again, it's not Chucky. It's not or anything. And it's just still I think this is now at 8 for me. I think it dropped down one spot. Um, but I do think it's probably my least favorite of the monster houses right now.
Yeah, I don't know where it goes currently on the Monster Houses. I'm gonna hold back and wait to get a couple of runs because I had some good runs, Premium Scream, and then on um, opening night I had a pretty bad run. So I I want some more runs before I decide. I think there's enough here for me personally that I do think that this one could be pretty solid for me at the end of the day because I do um I don't necessarily care as much of about the story. The story is nice to have, but once I know the story, I can kind of put all that on the back burner. It doesn't bother me as much for sure.
And I'm happy it doesn't. I really am, because I hate to be like the negative guy. I really love when people enjoy things, and I want to enjoy things like that too. I really do. So I'm happy it's higher for you, and that you're having a really good time with it. I think that's incredible and awesome, and yeah.
I think the only problem for me is the inconsistency of it. I think when this doesn't work, you can get some really bad runs. Like if Bungie She Wolf of London is not going, that's going to be the main time you see her. So she might not even be in the house for you. So
Yep.
there's some elements here. If you miss them, if things aren't timed up for you, if you don't see that Saskia dies because holding up the head, then you're not going to know that main element of the story. So I do think this is very timing specific house, and so I do think that it can definitely affect people's runs.
100%. Uh, I mean, my first run, I almost saw no one, so it's definitely a run dependent house too. Um, but let's move on. We're at the new parade. We're at the new tents now, but let's go back to the original tents, right? And
Yeah.
let's start off with the house that I know you want to talk about. I know you talked about it a little bit before, and I'm curious to see if your thoughts have changed or if there's relatively the same from when
Well,
we last talked, and that
I
is Slaughter Cinema 2.
I think my thoughts haven't changed. I just think that when I first said it, I think I was a little bit rushed. So I think I came off a little bit more drastic than I wanted. I think
Mhm.
I I've said it before and I said it again. I don't think there's a bad house in this house. So and I think I knew that putting it number 10, which I debated and not doing it. Just because I knew that it would be, I knew a lot of people really love this house, and I knew that it could potentially be, and I feel like it was close to number 9 with the Quiet Place. I think I could have probably swapped out either one, and I would have been okay with it. But I ultimately put it at number 10 because I thought, which which one had more that I liked, and that I experienced the opening weekend. Like which one just had more elements that I personally liked, and I had to go with A Quiet Place. Now that's not to say that there weren't things that I didn't like or I did like in Slaughter Cinema 2 because there are definitely some things that I think this house does well. But I do think I um definitely I think I saw on Twitter that people seem to think that I was crapping on this house. I really didn't intend to do that. I wasn't trying to crap on this house at all. I was really just trying to justify why I had number 10 because I knew just how much a lot of people really liked this house, and I wanted to justify why it just didn't click with me. And For those who didn't listen, the main things that I elements just of reasons why I didn't is that I just think there's some inconsistency of the for at least for me the inconsistency of some of the quality of the rooms. I think they do some rooms, I think they really slap and they really hit, and they have some good pinball scares, and then there's some other rooms that just don't quite do it for me. I think um and just I'm gonna point out a few things that just kind of bother me, and it is similar with you and Eternal Bloodlines. I know that
Mhm.
ultimately I don't think it matters, and I think people are gonna like what they like, and they don't what they don't. But it just there's some things that have bothered me about this house that just, and one of those things is that very first movie, the Mardi Gras one. It's themed around Mardi Gras, but then it's essentially just a generic. Is it supposed to be like a hotel room? I think it's supposed to be a hotel room or
I
an
think
apartment
so.
but there's nothing screams to me other than it's just kind of just your generic apartment. And the thing that makes it Mardi Gras is solely just kind of the opening little flashing scene, and then the villains, and I guess they're on kind of like a balcony, I guess, that but it doesn't just necessarily, I feel like if you're gonna make it Mardi Gras, make it just a little bit more, lean into the theme just a little bit more. I think that bothered me about it. It just kind of threw me off. I think the Christmas one, to me, I think could have been. It just kind of, and this is my more problem with all Christmas themed things, that they all just kind of feel the same. I think if we were going to do something Christmassy, maybe give it something to make it stand out a little bit more. Give it, I don't know, a setting or a villain or something that makes it just a bit more iconic. I do think that the other things that kind of bothered me is that you kind of got two zombie hybrid houses. You have the Night of the Living Dead clowns, which was just kind of your generic underground with kind of clowns that didn't quite. I think if you're going to do clowns, lean more into the clowns. Really, I'm not an
Mhm.
anti-clown person, but I think if you didn't know that they were clowns, if it didn't say that the clowns, I think the clown element kind of gets a little bit lost here. And two, it's the cyborgs, which, if I had to pick of the scenes that I didn't necessarily care for, which one I liked the best, it would be this cyborg scene, especially when you look up and you actually see the robot at the top. I think that is a really cool moment. But character designs just kind of falls flat for me. It just doesn't quite feel like robots. It felt just, it just didn't necessarily scratch the itch that I wanted it to scratch. Now the scenes that do hit for me really do work. I think um, I really do like the heavy metal hell, and especially that openings scene where you go in and you have kind of like you kind of go through that person's ripped dead body, and then before that you have like the TV, and I think that was a really fun moment. I liked that there. And then I also like the um kind of the Blood and Chum, the kind of Jaws stand-in here. I think that was a fun moment. It wasn't something. I think it's something that people have been asking for. Like, hey, I wonder if they could ever do Jaws. It felt like um, it was definitely like an ode to, like, a wink and nod to people who, like, oh, you think we can't pull off a Jaws house? Well, we'll show you. I think that was a fun little moment that was both kind of a nod to the super fan, but also I think regular generic people who are walking through this house is also going to like. So I like when
Mhm.
things are like a Easter egg to super fans, but also play well to the general audience as well. And I think this particular scene with the I wonder if Jaws could ever be a house type of moment, and I think that's kind of what they're playing on here. I think it works, and I think, and I also think the most clever of the titles. And it kind of does work too, is the zombie strippers unwrapped, and I think that those three scenes quite work. I think kind of the one I'm iffy about is the Western
Hatchet and
demons.
Chains.
Yeah, the Western Demons one, where it's, I think what they actually do here is actually pretty good, but I am a little bit disappointed because I have been wanting a sequel to Ghost Town, and I've been wanting it for a while, and I feel like having this here and this one might push back the time the when we get another full Western house by a year or two, longer than what we could have got one, just by having this here, because I think if they do it next year, some people could be like, oh, we get another Western thing, we already just got this in Slaughter Cinema. So I do feel while I like how it's utilized here, I do personally a little bit sad that this is the Western element that we get. I'm hope that we can get another one soon.
Yeah, and Mike, I'm gonna be honest. When you talked about Sludge's house last time, I didn't think you were shitting on it at all. I think you were passionate about the original house, especially, and just talking about some things that didn't work for you. And I think that's something as podcasters that we're just gonna do. Like, it's just we're HHN fans at heart, and like sometimes when things sort of hit us the wrong way, kind of like Eternal Bloodlines is narrative for me, we're gonna get we can be passionate on both sides. You know, like
Yeah,
when it stuff's really good, we're like we can talk about how good it is for hours and just go on and on and on. And when things sort of hit us the wrong way, we're also fans of the event, and sometimes we'll go the opposite way because it's just we're passionate, and that's part of it, right? And I think
well, I
everything that
wanted to like it too. I think that's plays the most thing is like Spirits of the Coven. I wanted to like that so much. I had so much high expectations, and then when it doesn't quite hit the way you want, similar to like Monsters in Hollywood for me too. That's when I think like um, things tend to it just doesn't quite work for you, and that's when it feels worse than it actually is.
yeah, and like I completely understand, and I understand a lot of your points. Right now it's at 4, but I still don't know where it's going to end up being in near the end. I just don't know where to put it under right now, but I'm not going to necessarily say that I'm in love with it. I really love a lot of the movies. I think a lot of them, the movies that I do like, save me, like save the house right now from the ones that I don't. But the ones that I don't like, I do not like. Um, I am actually one of the people who don't like, who doesn't really like Blood and Chum, only because like I just feel like the room itself is kind of bare. And I get it's a shitty movie and that's the point, but it's kind of really bare for me compared to the other rooms. And the puppet, while it's really cool, is something we kind of already saw at Knott's with the depths.
Yeah,
So
but most
it's
people
kind of
haven't. Most people
that's true,
haven't.
but it's biased, right? You know, it's the same
Right,
reason why I look at Monstros, and it's a reason why I'm going to look at this not as fondly, even though I still think it's fun, especially for people who have not seen that before. 100%. Um, but I think the ones that would do work, the Mummy Strippers is very funny. Even though it's a small room, it's very funny. Heavy Metal Hell is great. I like Mardi Gras Murders. I think it's funny. I don't know if you noticed the float under the balcony, like the big Mardi Gras float.
no, I
Um,
didn't see that at all.
I would
I would have loved, I haven't seen that yet.
I would
So,
look for that because that is a huge. I think I sort of agree with you till I saw that float, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like it's clear that Mardi Gras is happening outside, and we're just resting for a minute, and that's where they're coming in to get the kill. And well, like I think that's a fun, and I think like the actors are really funny when they kill and they dance a lot. So that movie works for me a little bit more. I like Zybergs. I don't love it, but I like it. Like it's weird because I feel like the first Slaughter Cinema, and it's the reason why it doesn't hit the original for me, is that every film hit. I don't think I had a film in that house where I was like, like I think every film did gave me, I don't know, like was fun and I really enjoyed it. This house, there's some that really hit, there's some that don't, and it's a hit or miss. And I guess I should have expected that for a sequel to Slaughter Cinema. I just didn't want to accept that that's something that could happen, but it is. But
yeah,
I still really like it. I still think there's fun things, um, for sure. I don't understand their reliance on starting every movie with the shadow projection in a window. They need to stop
yeah,
doing that because it was kind of like, all right, every movie starting the same way. That's not how it was in the original Slaughter Cinema. Every time you entered a movie in the original Slaughter Cinema, you felt like you were completely in a different environment. And in this one, I keep seeing a window with the shadow projection, and I don't know what's going on or why we're doing this. Um, but it's still
Yeah, I think that
fun.
was one of my problems too, is that those transitional hallways into the next one were, from what I've seen, were quite longer than the original, which made
Oh
the
yeah,
house feel shorter, just because of there was less meat and potatoes um, in this particular one, at least it seemed.
they're so much longer. Like they usually were only this one poster and blink or you miss it, which I guess why they wanted people not to miss it, but also you'll get it even if you don't see the poster, like you'll understand, so I don't know, maybe it was just layout. They had a specific movies they wanted to do and they had dead space. So like, all right, so just make the transitions a bit longer or something like that. I don't know why they did it that way. Especially because it's in the same tent, so they didn't have to, because they could have just done it like the original, but whatever. It is what it is. I still like it, has some flaws, but
Yeah,
I'm still it's a 4 for me. I still really like it. I want you to understand, because that I do understand a lot of your points, and I agree with a lot of your points, and I still don't know where this is gonna land at the end of the day, at the end of the run.
yeah, it's really interesting because it seems that the people who will like this house seem to really like it, and it seems that the people who don't care for this house seem to have it pretty low on their list. The group that I ran through on opening night was all had similar sentiments to me. Even honestly, worse. I think I was the one who liked it the most out of our group, and um, I haven't listened to his full show, but I listened to Matt's opening night show of Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights, and he seemed to allude that he didn't care for it. So I'm interested to see his final thoughts on it now that he's released his episode, as well as Jamie from Fear and Beer was interviewed in that same episode, and she seemed to allude she didn't necessarily care for it either. So it seems like I'm not alone. I'm interested to see what they're. I don't want to put words in their mouth. I don't want to, assign them anything without hearing their full thoughts on it. But it seems like I'm not
Mhm.
quite alone. That this seems there are people who definitely don't necessarily love this house.
We definitely recommend check out all those podcasts, please. Like not just ours.
Yes.
I think especially during the season, it is so much fun to listen to everyone's opinions on everything. It's just like you can eat all the content, and like I recommend please listen to all those Fear and Beer, Catacombs, RIP Tour. The
Yes,
list
definitely.
goes on. Like it's so much fun during the season to hear everyone's different takes and what everyone sort of agrees is the best or the worst, because there are some unanimous things for the most part. So definitely make sure to check all those out. But yeah, I get all your concerns, and I do think those complaints will start putting it lower than 4 for me eventually. I just don't have the heart to do it right now. I still think it's good though. I'm still, but
And I
not
do
as good as
too.
the original. Mhm.
I do think it's, again. I don't think there's a bad one in the bunch. I think
Mhm.
there's no stinker. I think this one is good. I think it's 10 with room to grow for me.
Absolutely. And I think that makes sense. And our last house here is seemingly almost unanimously, not for everyone, but for a lot of people, number 10 on a lot of people's list, at least for the general HHN fans. And that is the museum Deadly Exhibits and the next sprung tent over, the last house we're going to talk about. We're almost there, guys. We're
Yeah,
so
we're almost
close.
there. Yeah, one more. Yeah, I it's not my number 10, but I do think, and I think if I had to put a reason why it doesn't, it tries to do a lot. I think there's a lot of, and it doesn't all work. I think some of it works, but I don't think it all clicks for everyone. And I think it's, and definitely get why it could be 10 for people, just because if it if you don't necessarily love what it's trying to do, then you're not going to necessarily love this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, especially I was luckily like in the middle. Like I think I had it like at 6, or I didn't have too high
Yeah, I think I
expectations
don't
for what
remember.
this
I think I
was.
had it like 7 or 8 finally. Yeah, I had a
Yeah, we
low expectations, and I had it about the same where it landed.
Yeah, we were both pretty similar. I think Duff and I think Jess had it pretty high too, like near
Duff
the
had it
top
number
3 or
one. Duff had
yeah,
it
Duff
his
did.
most anticipated.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I just think for a lot of people, we're expecting so much of it because it makes sense, right? It's a museum, night of the museum, HHN style, like that's so cool. And I don't know if they did everything with the concept that they could have with this. Um, I feel like I don't know. As much as I like to say sprung tents can do no wrong and sprung tents can have huge things, and they can, maybe a museum concept would have been more suited for a soundstage. Because I feel like you could do some huge scenes with huge puppets of things coming to life in a museum that people want to see.
And I think
That,
that's what people wanted, to be honest.
yeah. And I think it, us being in a sprung tent doesn't stop that because there's been, I mean, we've had a subway for God's sake in a sprung tent. Like it's possible to have big scenes, but I think that immediately like made it so, okay, we're going to have a lot of smaller exhibits, maybe one bigger thing. And I don't know if that's what people wanted. And I don't necessarily know if they even executed what they were doing as well as they could have. I think a lot of the scares are security guards, which I don't love victim scares. So that's kind of not great for me. I think a lot of the actual things that are coming out at you are inch not the best. Like the mask is really cool until you realize it's just someone in a blackout suit, like just a just full up like like latex like
Yeah.
black suit with a mask, and it's so you like it's not like the mask is coming at you, which would be fun. It's just a person like, and it's like okay, that's interesting. It's a good scare, but it's like all right, and it's it's a house that I actually think can really grow if it can get scary, and I think it has a chance to because I had to run my last night on Saturday where the person in the camouflage like bush type thing ran out and scared the shit out of me. So if this house can do that consistently, then I think it can rise because sprung tents are good for scares, and I think it can do that. But just going by the sets and everything, I don't think anything is too impressive besides I think the most impressive thing is the Norwegian scene. Um, I I think you'd probably agree that that scene's like the highlight of the
Yeah,
house.
I would agree with that. Do you know what this one kind of reminds me of? Just like where it has potential is, it kind of reminds me a bit of like Nightingale's Blood Prey, where it's like
Hmm.
if it leans into like the claustrophobia and the scares with a few iconic moments. I think it could. This one could potentially get a cult following.
Yeah, and I hope so because I mean this is the house that has I think maybe the lowest weights besides Monstros, and I want it to win because I like houses with low weights that I could do multiple times. So I really I want it to succeed, and I'm rooting for it. I want museum to get out of the 10 spot for a lot of people and to rise up, and I think it has the potential, it has the possibility. You're working with the design of a house that isn't that good, but the scare spaces are, and I think if the scare spaces are used to their full potential, which I think they absolutely can be. Because we're only in week 2, like we're gonna get to week 3. The longer we go, the better everyone gets it at really like getting comfortable and scaring and really getting close and everything like that. That's just how HHN works. If we get to that point where it becomes one of the scarier houses, I think it will rise. And I think that's what this house needs, in my opinion, to get higher than, I mean, to rise for a lot of people, for most people. And I think it can. I think it has the potential to do it. The final scare, not final scare, but the final scene now has these big bloater type characters, and they're huge. And if they run at you and run it, like get you out of the house and can pull a bloater and really like scare the shit out of you, um, I mean, that would be a phenomenal ending. Right now, I'm only seeing the costumes, like I'm seeing the potential there. I'm ready for it to take, I don't know, like I don't know, for it to the house to go, and to really get going and to hit that week 3 stride. And I think it can. I'm really rooting for museum because I think it really has the potential to do so.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot what you said. I really hope that if the scares start to click for people, and that this could potentially start to rise on people. I don't think it's necessarily fair to put it at number 10. I think that what they're trying to do here with and some of the special effects and I don't think it's I don't know if 10 is a necessary. It doesn't feel right for me personally.
I
Um,
understand why it's 10 for people, especially those who had it really, really hyped. It's like a Slaughter Cinema situation, I think, for a
yeah,
lot of people where it's like, man, I was expecting this and I got this, you know? And
yeah,
that can cause
yeah,
major disappointment.
yeah.
And that put me with Tooth Fairy too. Um, right now for me, it's like it's 7. But I think it can go above a couple houses if it reaches its stride, and I think it can. I'm rooting for you, museum.
Definitely. All
Is
right.
there anything else you want to talk about with museum, or are you ready to like sort of finish off with I guess my week 2 rankings?
Let's do it. Let's finish off with a bit of a rapid fire of your week 2 rankings because I think we've definitely talked a lot about our thoughts. So let's just kind of rapid fire your rankings. I
Oh
am
yeah,
not going to do it because I mine are essentially the same. I only got to go week 1.
absolutely. And I can't wait to see your week 3 rankings because that's going to be fun. I think
Yeah,
because
I'm definitely making it this week.
oh
I'm
yeah, because
going
that week 1 to week 3 is gonna. I think they're gonna be some massive changes. Because that's a big jump, you know. Um, but really quickly, mine because I went over all of them, so I don't need to talk about any of them at all. 10 is A Quiet Place. 9 is Monstros. 8 is Universal Monsters Bloodlines, which is down 1 from last week. Museum is at 7, which is up 1 from last week. Triplets, which is at 6, which is down 1 from last week. Insidious the Further is at 5, which is up 1 from last week. Slaughter Cinema 2 is at 4, which is the same. Major Sweets Candy Factory is at 3, which is down 2 spots
Oh wow.
last week. Yep. Ghostbusters is number 2, which is up 1 spot from last week. And then Goblins is number 1, which is up 1 spot from last week.
Interesting. Very interesting.
The Ghostbusters, I think, is the biggest shock because I I just had better runs of it that week, and I think like these two, honestly, these three are going to be fighting the most. And it's going to be on a week by week basis on who ends up at 2, 3, and 1. Like I think we're going to be, yeah, I think that's what we're going to be. Um, and uh, and yeah, there we go. I think that's the episode.
Yeah, that was the episode. Yeah, definitely. Well, Jonathan, I really got to enjoy talking with you about and deep diving some of our thoughts here. And I'm excited to see what Duff and Jess think as well. So I'm sure we're not done talking about these houses. I'm sure you'll hear much more talk about them throughout the season.
We're definitely going to take a little break talking about the long form, those, because oh my God,
Yeah,
this was a long episode, but it was
it was.
fun. We got all our thoughts just out in the open. So next time it could be like, you guys can talk. We're good. You got it. Oh my
Well, if
goodness.
you want to talk about them, we would love to hear it and we'll play it on the show. You can always leave us a voicemail at 407-906-4134. You can also send your thoughts over at Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at HHN365 and at TikTok at HHN365 pod, or you can discuss it in the Discord, and the link is in the description. And we'll be back next week with, I believe, we're going to try to deep dive the zones next week, and we'll see you in the streets.